Hi guys, today we are going to continue in Unit 10 and we are going to look at Lesson 10.3, Finding the Slope of a Line. As always, before we get started, let's do a little bit of review that we are going to need in order to be successful in today's lesson. So remember we did practice with simplifying fractions. And when we're simplifying fractions, we want to look for something that I can divide the numerator and denominator by. And I always want to look for what is the biggest number or what is the greatest common factor that I can divide both of these by. So if I look at 12 and 16, I could divide both of them by 2, but that's not the greatest common factor of 12 and 16. The greatest common factor is 4. So I'm going to divide both of them by 4. 12 divided by 4 gives me 3. 16 divided by 4 gives me 4. So the simplest form of 12 over 16 is 3 over 4. Now let's say we had done divide it by 2. We would have gotten 6 over 8. Be very careful because don't assume just because it worked once that this is simplest form. We could divide by 2 again. So you always need to check and say, is there anything I can divide both 3 and 4 by? Is there anything I can divide both 6 and 8 by? So if we look at 9 and 12, what's the greatest common factor? The number that we can divide both of them by. Well, that's 3. I'm not even going to worry about that negative right now. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. But now I'm going to say, okay, I had actually negative 12 divided by 3. So I'm going to have negative 4 in the denominator. And this would be our simplest form. So like I said, today we're talking about slope. And slope is really, it's a ratio. Remember, fraction is one way to write a ratio. And it describes the steepness of the line, how steep it is. So we have some lines that might be really steep, and we have some lines that might not be so steep. And it's just describing with numbers how steep a line is. And we write the slope as the rise, or the vertical change, over the run, or the horizontal change. So rise over run. You can think about it this way. But this is a phrase that you'll hear a lot. Even in upper math classes, we say slope is rise over run. Rise over run. So we always want to think about positive versus negative slope in terms of what's happening as we move from left to right. So think about when you're reading a book, you read the words on the page from left to right. And if I read this from left to right, I see that the car would be going up the hill. So that makes it a positive slope. If I read it from left to right, just like I would a book, just like I'm reading these words, I'm reading it starting at the end and reading it toward the end of the slope. And so if I go left to right here, the car would be going downhill, so that would be negative slope. So find the slope of a line. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look and say, is it positive or is it negative? Well, thinking about reading from left to right, I'm always going to start at the left point. Let me get a different color. Starting at the left point, what's happening? I'm driving uphill. So that means it's going to be a positive slope. And this is just a note for me to remember later on that this is positive. So slope is rise over run. So let's see, how many do we rise? And I always start with that point that's on the left because we read it left to right. So the left point. And from here, I'm going to see how many points does it take me to get to this point, the same height as the next point. So I'd have to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oops, sorry. So I have a rise of 8. And next I need to see how many do I run to get from this point to this point. So this one I'd have to go 1, 2, 3. I run 3. So my slope is 8 over 3. And I knew it was positive because as I look left to right, it's moving up. Now, the reason I had us review simplifying fractions is that we always need to check our slope and see if it's in simplest form. So is there anything that I can divide both 8 and 3 by? No. The only thing I can divide 3 by is 3 and 1, and only 1 goes into 8, but it doesn't do any good to write divide by 1. So these are, this is simplest form. All right. Find the slope of the line. I'm going to pick the number on the left, and I'm going to do rise over, I know I switched rise and run with the colors, but that's okay. But first again, let's look and see, is this going to be a positive slope or a negative slope? So if I pick my left point and read it left to right, even though it's a little bit, it's not as steep as the last one, I'm moving down from left to right, so that means that this would be a negative slope. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to say, okay, how many do I rise? And I'm still going to start from the left. And rise we think of as only going up, but we're also talking about what if we go down? So in other words, how many do I have to move down? 1, 2. Now I'm moving downwards, which in the y direction is negative. So I'm going to have a negative 2 over, how many do I run? I'm running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This time I moved to the right, which is in the positive direction. So I have a positive 5. My final answer should be negative, and I can see I've got 1 negative. Is there anything I can divide both 2 and 5 by? No. 2 is only divisible by 1 in itself, and 2 does not go into 5. So negative 2 over 5 is our slope. All right, so try this one, pause the video, and then come back and check your answer. All right, so we've got slope is rise over run. So when I count from left to right, if I count it, I'm going up 6 and over 4. So hopefully you also answered the question of which kind of slope do we have here, positive or negative? If we look left to right, I'm driving uphill. So this is going to be a positive slope. So then it's good that I got 2 positive numbers. Is this my final answer though? Remember, we always need to see, is there anything that we can divide by? And in this case, there is. We can divide by 2. And when we divide by 2, we get 3 over 2. And that is our slope in simplest form. All right. Here's another one that you can pause and try in your notes and then check back and see how you did. So on this one, hopefully you looked at this and said, okay, if I start from the left and move my way to the right, I'm following this line down. It's a very steep hill, but my car would be driving downhill. So that means it's going to be a negative. And I can verify that to get from here to here, I have to go down 9. When I go down 9 and then over 3, if I want to simplify this further, I can divide them both by 3. And something weird is going to happen then. I'm going to get negative 3 over 1. If you give me that as an answer, I'll say, this is okay. But there's a better answer. Negative 3 divided by 1 is negative 3. So even though we don't have a denominator here, I know that it means over 1. This is okay, but this is better. This is the best answer that you can write. It's a really weird smiley face. All right, so draw a line through the point 2, 3, and with a slope of 1/2. So first I have to graph this point, 2, 3. So I'm going to go over 2 and up 3. And then it's got a slope of 1/2 over up. So what I'm going to do is think about rise over run. So I'm going to rise 1, and then I'm going to run 2. Rise 1, run 2. And I'm going to do that one more time just to make sure. Rise 1, run 2. And then I'm going to connect those with a line. And remember, line has arrows on either end. Just like that. Draw a line through the point with negative 1, 5 and a slope of negative 2. So graphing the point negative 1, 5, I'm going to move left 1. Remember that this is x, this is y. So I'm moving left 1 and up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's my starting point. And it says a slope of negative 2. Well, we've got slope is rise over run. So we would have -2 over, do you remember what our run is then? If no number's written, it's the same as over 1. So we're going to go down 2 because it says rise -2. So in the negative direction, that would be going down. 1, 2, and run 1. Down 2 over 1. And I like to do that a couple times just to make sure that it's working and that it's just like it gives us a more accurate line, the more points you have on the line. So if I then said name a point on that line, one example, not including the -1, 5 that we were given, one example would be 0, 3. I move over 0 up 3. Another one would be 1, 1. So both of those would be examples of points on that line. All right, your turn. Pause the video, come back, see what you get. All right, so this one might have gotten a little bit confusing because as you can see, with a slope of 7 over 4, it means that our graph actually goes, or our point actually goes off the graph, and that's okay. So this would be a case where I would say, it's all right not to go up 7 and over 4 more. That actually goes off my screen. So really, we do just need 2 points, but the more points we have, the more accurate our line is going to be. So if I asked you for what point this was, we can see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it goes off by 1, so it's 8. And then this is 6. So the point would be 8, 6. All right. Draw the line through the point -3, -7, and with a slope of -2/3. Pause the video, come back, and check your work. All right, so maybe you're at this point going, wait a second, what do I do? It goes left 3 and down 7, but then we have a slope of -2/3, so I need to rise -2 and run 3, but that's way off my graph. Here's the cool thing about negatives. If I have -2/3, remember we talked about negative fractions, that negative can go with the denominator, true, but it can also go with the denominator. It can go here. So I'm going to choose to think of it this way. And we've been thinking about it going left to right, but if you are asked to graph something where it's already at the edge of your graph and it's going to take you way off the graph, we can actually work right to left as well. So what I'm going to do is think about rise over run in the opposite way that we were thinking of it before. I'm putting the negative in the denominator, and so I'm going to rise 2, 1, 2, but then I'm going to run -3. And -3 in the x direction is to the left, so it's going to go 1, 2, 3. Now, that's a little weird because that means that we didn't create the left point, we created the right point, but it allows us to draw our line. And I can double check that this works because if I go here and start from the left and count what is the slope, I would go down 2. So I'd have this -2 here. And I would run 3. So -2 over 3. And that is the same thing as 2 over -3. So this would be the line. And this point here would be -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So -6, -1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would be the coordinate for that point. So hop on over to Google Classroom, check out your assignment for the day, and let me know if you have any questions.